So I am watching the clock and I think it's 3:15. So I think I will get started. I've muted you all, but you can either unmute yourself and ask a question anytime in this presentation. It would actually be really helpful. Or you can type it in the chat. And I have a couple colleagues that are on this video as well. And so they would be able to either answer your question or relay it to me. I will let everybody know that it is being recorded. Hopefully you still feel comfortable in asking questions because that will be of value to everyone. So let's get started. So my name is Connie Terry. I am a math consultant for Green Hills AEA. I serve out of the Creston office and spend some time in this East region. We've been working in SDI math work for a few years now, and we just wanted an opportunity to reach out to everybody to talk about progress monitoring a little bit and some very specific probes. Oh, now I can't advance my slides. Let's see. Here we go. So these math progress monitoring webinars, there'll be 3 of them today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. They each will have a focus on one specific probe. And today we'll be giving a little bit of information about a probe on estimation that works well in kind of the middle grades. So what we need from you is we need anyone who ends up giving these assessments, we need your email address. And so we ask that each of you that end up using these, we just need an email from sent to math@ghaea.org. That will allow us to keep track of where these probes go out to. And if you give us that, we will then in turn get you access to those probes. Those probes will come to you at no charge, but I do sincerely ask you not to share those. We want everybody to have viewed the video or be part of this webinar before you use them, just so that they're used correctly. That's the only reason. So I ask only that you reach out to us. We can get the video link to anyone, and then they can have access to those as well. So the reason we're offering this little bit of training is because we have a lot of special education and gen ed teachers that are struggling to find the right choices in progress monitoring. AIMSWeb has gone through a pretty significant change from their old paper and pencil AIMSWeb product to something called AIMSWeb Plus. Some schools have that as an option, some don't. And so that's kind of caused a little stir that people need a tool. Also, some people have FastBridge and they have math as an option. The problem is there's a little bit of issues around these middle grades, again, 4th grade on. CBM automaticity kind of tops out at 3rd grade for many kids. The CBM math CAP probe doesn't have a very good rate of increase. It's not very sensitive to growth. And the CBM process is really difficult to get trained in scoring and to get certified in scoring and to give consistent scores. So we just saw a need to provide something, and if there's something that we can put out that might be useful to you, we wanna get that out. So the estimation probe that we'll be talking today was produced by a professor out of Iowa State University, Dr. Ann Fagan. This particular estimation probe asks students to choose between 3 possible answers. Each of those 3 options differ by a factor of 10. So you would have answers that would range in like 3, 30, and 300. The idea there is kids have to understand both the numbers in the problem, the size of those numbers and their value, and the operation that's causing them to change. So those 2 ideas in conjunction allow kids to make a good estimate when they have good number sense and good sense around the operation, good understanding of the operation. Without either of those, they're going to be in trouble in mathematics as a whole, and this could really show growth in those areas. The problems on this probe are both strictly computational, so they'll be just an expression that you're able to solve, like 85 divided by 9, or contextual, like it will tell a little story about kids sharing pizza. So the strengths of this measure is first and foremost the format that it really allows kids to, allows us to measure kids' ability to think about both number and operation. And it does this in a way, it's not strictly around computation, but it has this larger idea of really understanding number and understanding operation. It's also a really valuable tool outside of school. Parents often want kids to have good ability to estimate. That becomes an important skill in job and life, and so there's value there as well. Also can be quickly and easily scored. It's a 3-minute probe. It's multiple choice, so teacher friendly in using as well. There's multiple equivalent forms available. They have good test, retest, reliability, so they're equal difficulty, and they can be used across an academic year if you need that for an IEP. Some of the limitations, and once you look at them, you may find others, but some of the limitations is the probe does need to be timed for accurate scoring. So I know some special education teachers really struggle with that idea, that it's not best for all kids to be timed. I just really ask you to consider that it be timed, because that's how the probe was actually created, and you get good data that way. There's also a problem that students with some reading difficulties may need the probe read to them. Some of the problems are just computational, and so they could move through those just fine, but every other problem is contextual. And so I imagine that would take me sitting with the student, reading the problem to them, and them answering that problem. So I think the next slide is a try it slide. So hopefully it's clear enough that you'll be able to see the probe, and I'll give you not 3 minutes, because you'll only see a portion of the probe, but I'll give you a few minutes and you can scratch out some answers. When you do this probe, I'll ask you just to estimate. You will not need to calculate each of those answers. So I'll give you a minute just to look at the probe and experience it yourself. Okay, so that at least gives you an opportunity to try a few of the problems yourself, or at least glance through them. Would somebody be willing to unmute or go ahead and put something in the chat? Just some noticings on this, how it might be different or similar to something you've done in the past. So does anybody want to make something that they notice or wonder about this particular probe?
My partner and I were wondering what grade level this would be. Is this a 5th grade probe?
Thank you for hopping on. So we've been talking a lot about what grade level it would be appropriate for. I think it has a lot of 5th grade content, but it could also be used, I believe it could successfully be used throughout middle school, for sure to 7th grade. So I would capture it in those areas, 4th through 7th grade. I think wherever it's right for kids and wherever it's right for your instruction. You obviously notice there are some rational numbers in it. So there is some fraction work. There is some decimal work as well. There's certainly division in there. And so I wouldn't, I would be thinking 5th grade on up. What did you think? Is that what you were thinking?
I was thinking at least fifth.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there would be too many items that a student would have to skip if you were much lower than 5th.
Mhm. We were hoping it wasn't.
Yeah, it'll be plenty difficult just for a 5th grader, right?
I hopped on a few minutes late. Do we have access to these probes?
Yeah, so all you have to do is I'll send out the link to this video, but all you have to do to have free open access to these is send us an email, and you'll be giving us your name and your email address, and then we'll give you full access to the directions, the probes, and the answer keys.
Okay.
Yep. Well, thanks for jumping on. Somebody else, anything you notice or wonder when you look at this probe?
I love that show. And I think it's just getting to that.
Well, I will just add that, because I'm not sure who's there live or just people on and kind of recording since the video, the video screens aren't on. I will just add that when I take this probe, I have this feeling that I should calculate each of these. And so kids will have to be encouraged to estimate these and be reminded of that. The intent is not to teach to this probe and teach kids how to take this probe. When kids grow in their number sense and their understanding of the operations, they will get increasingly better at this probe, but you will have to remind them the point is not to calculate an answer, but to think about the numbers, think about the operations, and think about what answer is the most reasonable of the three. Okay, I'm going to click forward and show you, if you happen to write down some of the answers, I'm going to show you the answer key. I have to tell you, the answer key right now is in kind of bad form, the one I copied, because I wanted to get it to you. But you'll notice that each of them just have a gray shading over the correct answer. And the formatting is ridiculous. So it will get fixed, but right now that's what my copy looked like. So just so you can see what those look like. Now what you're seeing is just a portion of one probe. The intent is that we give enough items that the kids are not meant to complete it. No kid, even a gen ed kid, is intended to complete this probe in the 3 minutes given. So this is showing 10 questions. The actual probe is 40 questions. So there'll be 20 questions on the front of the page and 20 questions on the back. You know your students best. If you choose to only give them one page because it might be overwhelming to give both, that's your choice. But if the student is moving through that single page, please give them the opportunity to do more and to push themselves to complete this efficiently.
I was wondering, is there any kind of norms set for these so that, say I have a 7th grader and he's taking this, what would we expect him to actually be able to do?
Well, I think I planted you because that's one of my next slides. So thank you. Well done. Let me click through how to score it real quick. And then the very next slide is the norms we have for those. So when you give this assessment, there are directions to give students a script to read the first time you give it, and then every subsequent time how you prep the students for the test. But it is a 3-minute probe. The intent that it is timed. Even for students that need more time to do other things, it would be best to have a consistent amount of time so that you can measure their growth in that consistent amount of time. There is no calculator expected on this probe. Again, I have teachers that say, oh, nope, we allow our kids to use a calculator. I encourage you to think through the purpose of this probe. It's not to get the computational answer. It's to think about the numbers and think about the operation and how those play together to get an answer. So really, really, I ask you to really consider no calculator on this. That is the intent. When you score this, it's really important. It is correct items. And then there's a adjustment for guessing. So you're going to take the number of correct items and subtract a half point per incorrect item. So because it's multiple choice, it allows kids to have that correction. Now the directions do say, if you don't know the answer, skip it and go to the next question. There is no penalty for skipping a question, but for incorrect answers, they do give a half point off. So let's say I completed 14 questions and I got 10 correct and 4 wrong. I would take that 10 and subtract 2 points, a half point per incorrect item, and get a total score of 8. And like that last bullet, no problem with skipping questions. That's allowed. It is not meant to be a percent correct type probe. I should not count the number correct or the number completed out of a total of any kind. It really is important that you follow these scoring directions to get your most accurate to the research results. Okay, so I think it's Jean. You asked about these norms. Before you get into this, I can explain what this is. Lisa Magnuson created this, so she can jump in too. But the most important thing to know is that this was done on a small group of students, these norms. It was not done on a really robust group of students from various locations across the nation. It wasn't. And so we have to take this with a little bit of caution. They were also done quite a while ago, so we might have some differences locally or even across the state. So I ask you to take them with a bit of caution, but this is what we have. So we have some 6th grade norms. If you first look at the fall mean, winter mean, and spring mean, so 12 points, 16 points, 18 points across the year. You can see those for each of the grade levels.
All right. We also had this question, the three of us. We have middle school, high school students. Is this at all possible for high school at all?
It is, depending on what the instruction looks like. I will say you're gonna, across these 3 days, you may be very interested also in the third one called Algebra Basic Skills. And there is another one that I'm not doing by video, but we can figure out a way to get you training on called Algebra Foundations. Now, I don't know what your students are working on, and so that really depends on how we choose a probe.
Is this meant to give all 3 probes or to rotate these probes?
That's a great question. So I want to assess kids as little as possible so that I can spend as much time instructing as possible. So in a best case scenario, I would select the one probe that would give me the information I need. And the information I need is really, is my student growing towards an expected goal, like an expected benchmark? And so if this single probe can give me the information I need, I could just give this one probe. If I need a second probe, I guess that would be because maybe I'm very far off grade level with my probe, and I need to also see if they're catching up with their peers. That might be another reason to give a second probe. And I might not give each of those, certainly would not give each of those weekly. They really are intended to stand alone, if possible. So with this group of kids, and I remind you again, this research was done with a small group of kids. We see growth rates around 0.2 to 1/4 point per week. So that would be growing 1 point every 5 weeks or every 4 weeks, in that range. I would ask you to consider also, because this wasn't done recently or with a real robust set of students, to consider if I have a group of general education, if I have some peers, I could give the probe to a group of students, a class of students, or a full grade, to get a local mean and see how that compares to this, to try to help me sort out what kind of growth rate I would expect for my individual students.
I have one more question.
Please.
They have told us that the reason we can't use some of the probes that we've been using in the past is because they aren't normed. And the norms aren't, well, then the norms are old, they say, and that's why we can't use these probes anymore, because the State Department doesn't authorize them. Does the State Department authorize this?
Well, I don't know that the State Department is authorizing any math probes either way.
Oh.
I don't know that. I'm not saying they do or they don't. Maybe one of my other Green Hills friends might be able to jump in if I'm misspeaking here. But I do know, there's some approved or reviewed probes in reading. Those have taken, the state has certainly taken a different approach with literacy than they have with math. Math has been a little bit more hands-off and locally decided. I would just add to this, like I would advocate for this probe for middle school and high school students a little bit more than some of the other probes that have been used in the past. For one reason being, this reflects more of middle school content than many other probes that we give in its use of number sense and operational sense, and also the number choices it uses. It really does get into decimal and fraction work that I think is important to see in middle school and high school students. So I'd encourage you to look at this, but I will defer to anyone else from the AEA if there's something else that should be said around, I don't know how you said it, but some approved list of probes.
Hi, Connie. This is Ron. I mean, just thinking for the early literacy assessments, which are more of a district-wide assessment that that's happening at a primary level. I mean, there is a state-approved list. Most people are using FAST, but we're talking about progress monitoring tools. I don't. There's really there's no mandated list other than just kind of the evaluation standards that are out there, just saying that indicate we should be using high-quality tools.
Mm-hmm.
That would give us valid and reliable results. But no, there wouldn't be a yes/no list for progress monitoring tools that we use in IEPs.
Thanks, Ron. And so I'm just going to throw this out that the math team, along with your special education rep, will certainly partner and try to figure out what's best for your students. I appreciate that, and that we this video meeting tries to bring forth what we believe is best practice, but then also a viable tool for those reasons, that it is valid and reliable. Thank you for the questions. Do you have another before I click on?
Thank you for all the information you're giving us.
Sure. Okay, so Lisa was kind enough to write up a sample, a possible sample IEP goal, and the wording that might be used. So I assume you can read that off the screen. But in 36 academic weeks, given a 3-minute math probe that includes both computational and contextual estimation involving all 4 operations, fractions, decimals, and percents, students will earn blank points by choosing the best estimate from 3 choices on 3 out of 4 consecutive trials. I think you would build those numbers, from gathering good baseline data from your student, possibly gathering a little bit of local data as well, and the growth rate suggested on that previous page. Those growth rates, we can share that table with you when we share the probes, if that's helpful. And we'll also be willing to field email questions as we all get used to this particular probe. So that's all I've got until tomorrow. So what questions can I either answer or write down and try to get an answer to you later? I do want to mention just one more thing I wrote down in notes, and I meant to say it along the way. I really want to just mention the purpose of progress monitoring. We see it misused at times. We see it used to diagnose problems with kids that kids are having in mathematics. It shouldn't be used diagnostically. It shouldn't be used for a grade for students. It shouldn't be used to drive daily instruction. I don't want to be teaching to this probe because I'll get some false growth. I want to be teaching kids a nice round curriculum, a really strong intervention, and that will cause the growth. Progress monitoring should show us growth over time. I shouldn't be too reactionary, but I should look for trends over time in the hopes I can see growth towards peers or towards a goal. So I will be quiet for one more minute and see if I can coax any more questions out of you.
We have one more question regarding the grade level. Are there other estimation probes that you can use with younger grades?
I don't have any other estimation probes.
Okay.
I will ask the, there might have been one in the original research. I will ask Ann Fagan if she still has that one and if there's any, norming of that as well. Like something with all whole numbers. Is that what you're thinking? Yes. Okay. I will tell you, I will brag on her. She is, we have an expert in math progress monitoring right here in our state, right up the road. And she is great and helpful and really wants what's best for kids. So I will happily ask her that question. She is thrilled that her probes are kind of getting out to you guys and hopes that they're helpful for you. All of the work was grant funded. And so that's how she's able to offer these with a little bit of training to get them out to you guys.
Yes, I took her the Ames progress monitor.
Oh, good, yes. Well, that's where that algebra basic skills is coming from that we'll be talking about on Wednesday.
Okay.
Connie, we are having an IEP meeting tomorrow night during this time, And so 2 out of 3 of us can't watch it. Is there a way to be able to access this information other than just be here at 3:15?
Yeah. So I will, and I'm going to send this out to everyone. I'm going to send you the video, tomorrow's video. I'm going to send that to everybody who emailed me. There were some people who planned on being here and weren't, whatever, right? Or maybe you'd want to watch me again, right? So I will send it out to everyone, just so you have all that information so you could always go back and look at it. And that will allow you, I assume you'll watch it and then you'll send me an email and say, yep, I need to use that one. We'll get your name on the list and you can use it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,